So Russia is once again claiming to have tested their Burevestnik, or Skyfall, nuclear-powered cruise missile that they allege has practically unlimited range and, as a result, is all but indefensible. But as you might expect when it comes to Russian claims about groundbreaking new weapon systems, Skyfall is not quite the 21st century technology that Moscow wants you to believe it is. Now, according to Russian state media, this first successful test of their nuclear-powered cruise missile covered a genuinely impressive 8,700 miles while staying airborne for around 15 straight hours, suggesting an average subsonic speed of around 580 miles per hour, or about the same speed as a Tomahawk cruise missile. But while a Tomahawk can reach targets as far out as maybe 1,550 miles, the Burevestnik could, at least in theory, keep flying for days under nuclear power. Like most Russian defense efforts, this successful test was not announced until after it was completed, which allows them to deny any reports of failures, as we have seen with this very program in the past. Back in 2017, this very effort saw a test launch fail that went completely unreported in Russian media until American intelligence reports started highlighting Russia's search and recovery efforts off of its northern coast. Then in 2019, an explosion from a, quote, isotope power source believed to be recovered from that very Skyfall missile killed at least 5 Russian scientists on a barge in the White Sea, but again, was not disclosed to the public until nearby European nations started reporting spikes in radiation levels. Now, a nuclear-powered cruise missile is arguably useful because of its practically limitless range, using an onboard nuclear reactor to superheat and effectively expand air to be pushed out the back as thrust, rather than combustion, created by mixing air with fuel and then igniting it. And futuristic as that might sound, this concept's actually been around for a very long time now. All the way back in the late 1950s, the US Air Force kicked off its own Project Pluto, which aimed to produce nuclear-powered ramjet propulsion systems for similar but supersonic cruise missiles. Now, the result of these efforts was the SLAM missile, short for Supersonic Low-Altitude Missile, and according to the Air Force, this weapon would have been able to fly for about 113,000 miles before running out of onboard nuclear fuel. Now, that's nearly enough to circle the globe 4 times. The onboard nuclear reactor in the SLAM missile was said to be capable of producing 500 megawatts of power while operating at 2,500 degrees Celsius, or around 4,500 degrees Fahrenheit. But the problems with the SLAM missile really outweighed its potential benefits. The unshielded nuclear reactor powering the missile would basically rain radiation onto the ground as it flew, and that wasn't necessarily a huge problem when irradiating adversary territory, but it's a very big problem when this long-ranged weapon has to fly over your own country or potentially several other countries along the way to a target. And crashing such a weapon with a functioning nuclear reactor on board could likewise spell disaster, especially if it crashed in a country that it was just meant to fly over. It was just a diplomatic nightmare. Ultimately, ICBMs could deliver payloads just as far at higher rates of speed and with similar chances of success. So Uncle Sam canceled the SLAM missile and the whole Project Pluto effort in 1964 because, well, it was dumb. And I guess Russia just hasn't gotten that memo yet. So at least for now, it appears Russia's Skyfall missile may be back on track to eventually make its way into service. But in terms of strategic capability that it adds, I'm not really sure that it offers any. Assuming it would carry a nuclear payload along with its nuclear propulsion, this weapon wouldn't represent a more difficult intercept than Russia's ICBM arsenal, let alone hypersonic nuclear weapons like Avangard. Skyfall just wouldn't pose any threat to the US that doesn't already exist in the form of ICBMs and especially Russian submarine-launched ballistic and cruise missiles, all of which can already reach the American mainland and often would be more difficult to intercept than a low-flying subsonic cruise missile. So why bother with a weapon like Skyfall or Russia's Burevestnik? Well, like lots of Russian military efforts, because they know it sounds scary. And sounding scary is really all you need to drum up a bunch of headlines about nuclear war and intimidate those in the West into believing that Russia is still a military force to be reckoned with, even if objective reality really says otherwise at this point.